Stop everything right now. Put down whatever you are doing. Because in the last 2 hours, something happened in a federal courtroom in Washington, D.C. that every financial analyst, every market commentator, every economic reporter covering this crisis has been dreading. The judge struck back. Not the Supreme Court this time, the district court judge. The one who had been waiting. The one who had the evidence the whole time. The one who, when the Supreme Court sent the case back with a new standard, applied that standard and reached the same conclusion he reached the first time. Trump's worst nightmare just became reality, and the economy is already collapsing in response. I have one number for you. One number that tells you exactly what this means for your savings account, your mortgage rate, your retirement fund. I am not giving it to you yet. I am giving it to you at the end of this video, because without everything I am about to show you, that number will not mean anything. Stay with me, because what happened in that courtroom today is not just a legal story, it is a financial story. And the financial story is the one nobody is telling you clearly. Let me start with what actually happened, because the mainstream coverage is burying the most important economic details. The Supreme Court ruled. They set a standard, a heightened threshold for what constitutes willful, deliberate presidential contempt that meets the bar for criminal detention. 2 categories: official acts protected by immunity, personal conduct not protected. Judge Holloway, Trump's own 2019 appointee, took that standard, applied it to the evidence. The evidence, a preservation order received at 2:17 p.m., a private meeting at 4:45 p.m., in which Trump asked his IT specialist exactly how long deleted messages remain permanently unrecoverable. The answer, 72 hours. The follow-up question, is there any backup system that could retain them longer? The answer, no. And then, exactly 73 hours later, 1 hour past the permanent deletion window, the mass deletion of 237 signal messages in a single batch operation at 5:52 p.m. Holloway's finding: this conduct is personal, not official, not the exercise of presidential power. A man calculating the technical requirements for undetectable evidence destruction and then executing that destruction with 1 hour precision is not acting as president. He is acting as a defendant. And defendants are not immune from contempt. Second arrest order issued, live, in open court. Again. And here is the economic bomb buried in that word, again. Again is the most economically significant word in the ruling, not because of what it says legally, because of what it says to markets. The first arrest order was unprecedented. Markets had never priced a presidential arrest warrant before. The uncertainty premium they attached to it was the uncertainty of the genuinely unknown. How do you price something that has never happened? The second arrest order is not unprecedented, it is confirmation. And confirmation is priced differently from precedent. Here is the distinction that financial media is completely missing. When an unprecedented risk materializes for the first time, markets discount it heavily. They price it as a tail event, possible but unlikely to persist. The institutional credibility damage is real, but treated as recoverable. When the same risk materializes a second time, markets stop discounting it. They stop treating it as a tail event. They start pricing it as a feature, a permanent characteristic of the current institutional environment rather than a temporary disruption. And permanent features are priced at higher multiples than temporary disruptions. The second arrest order tells markets 3 things simultaneously. First, the evidence was strong enough to survive the Supreme Court's heightened standard. Second, the district court is not backing down. Third, the constitutional framework that the Supreme Court established, personal versus official conduct, does not protect Trump from this specific charge. That third piece is the one that should make you sit up straight. Because if the Supreme Court's immunity framework does not protect Trump from the contempt charge, it means the perjury charge, the 14 authenticated audio recordings, the gap between private statements and sworn testimony also potentially survives under the personal conduct exception. The second contempt ruling is not just about 237 deleted messages, it is a signal about the entire legal exposure. Markets are pricing that signal right now. Let me walk you through the specific dollar impact on your finances, not abstractions, real numbers. Before today's ruling, the institutional uncertainty premium on 10-year Treasury yields was approximately 14 basis points above what energy and economic fundamentals alone would predict. That 14 basis points was the residual from the first arrest order and the Supreme Court proceedings, partially resolved by the framework ruling but not fully eliminated. After today's ruling, that premium is moving upward. The confirmation effect I described, markets pricing the second order as a feature rather than a tail event, is adding to the baseline. Preliminary estimates from fixed income analysts put the new premium closer to 18 to 20 basis points. 4 to 6 additional basis points. Let me show you what that means for you specifically. On a $300,000 mortgage, 4 additional basis points is approximately $120 per year. On a $500,000 mortgage, it is approximately $200 per year. These are not dramatic numbers per household. But applied to $13 trillion of outstanding American residential mortgage debt, 4 basis points is approximately $5.2 billion per year in additional interest costs flowing from American homeowners to mortgage investors. $5.2 billion per year from this one ruling, added to the existing $37.8 billion per year from the accumulated institutional uncertainty. The running total of annual additional interest costs from the Trump legal crisis is now approaching $43 billion per year. And here is what makes that number personal. It is not paid by Trump. It is not paid by the government. It is paid by every American who has a mortgage, a car loan, a student loan, a business line of credit, every American whose borrowing cost is benchmarked against Treasury yields that are elevated by institutional uncertainty that did not exist before this crisis began. Here is the hook I need you to hold in your mind for the rest of this video. The second arrest order arrived in a context that did not exist when the first arrest order came. When the first arrest order came in July, the Hormuz crisis was running simultaneously. Oil was at $126 per barrel. The double shock, energy supply disruption plus American institutional credibility damage was producing the compounding economic damage I detailed in previous analyses. Since then, partial Hormuz deal optimism has pulled oil back towards $79. The double shock intensity has reduced. The market has been pricing a world in which both crises are moving toward partial resolution. The second arrest order, arriving as the Hormuz deal remains fragile and the constitutional uncertainty has just been confirmed rather than resolved, resets that partial resolution narrative. Markets were pricing legal crisis on a path to resolution, energy crisis on a path to deal. The second ruling says legal crisis is not on a path to resolution, it is on a path to escalation. Escalating legal crisis plus fragile energy deal equals a higher uncertainty premium than either crisis alone. The compounding is not additive, it is multiplicative, and the multiplication is running right now in the prices of every American financial asset. Now let me tell you about the 24-hour window, because this is where your money is most at risk in the immediate term. The Supreme Court will be asked to stay the second arrest order. Again, the application will be filed within hours. The court will face a choice: stay the order again while deliberating on whether the lower court correctly applied their framework, or let the order stand and allow the constitutional confrontation to proceed. The economic impact of the next 24 hours depends entirely on that choice. If the court stays the order quickly, within hours, as they did the first time, markets partially stabilize. The acute enforcement risk is removed. The institutional uncertainty premium stops rising temporarily. If the court takes longer, if internal deliberations about whether to grant a second stay produce a delay, every hour of that delay is an hour of maximum uncertainty priced into American assets. The Dow Jones is not waiting for legal analysis. Trading algorithms are moving on the probability distribution of outcomes, and that distribution just shifted dramatically when the second arrest order was issued. This is why I said stop everything at the beginning of this video, because right now, in the next 24 hours, the economic stakes are at their highest point since the first arrest order. Not because the underlying legal situation is worse than it was. Because the confirmation effect of a second ruling, proving the evidence is strong, the judge is not backing down, and the Supreme Court framework does not protect against this specific conduct, has shifted the probability distribution in ways that are being priced right now. Let me now explain why Judge Holloway's identity makes this ruling economically more powerful than if any other judge had issued it. Holloway is a Trump appointee. confirmed during Trump's first term, nominated by a president who prizes loyalty above almost everything else. And yet Holloway has now issued 2 arrest orders against that same president based on the same evidence, applying the same legal reasoning, even after the Supreme Court elevated the standard he needed to meet. Here is the economic significance of that judicial identity. The entire political strategy for managing the legal crisis has depended on a narrative, that the courts are politically motivated, that judges are biased against Trump, that the legal proceedings are a weaponization of the justice system by political opponents. That narrative has one critical vulnerability. It cannot survive a Trump-appointed judge issuing a second arrest order after applying the Supreme Court's own elevated standard. When Trump's own judge, applying the Supreme Court's own test, finds the same result twice, the political bias narrative collapses. And when the political bias narrative collapses, the market's ability to discount the legal risk as political noise collapses with it. Markets had been applying a political discount to Trump's legal exposure, treating a portion of the legal risk as motivated rather than evidence-driven, and therefore not fully credible as institutional credibility damage. Holloway's second ruling eliminates that discount. The evidence is what it is, the standard has been applied, the result is the same. This is not politics, this is the legal system functioning exactly as designed. When markets can no longer apply a political discount, they price at full institutional credibility weight. Full weight on a second presidential arrest order is in the $43 billion per year figure, and it is compounding. Let me also show you what the markets are doing right now in real time, because the financial data is telling a story that the legal coverage is not capturing. Equity markets opened lower after the ruling became public. The S&P 500 dropped in the first hour of trading. Not dramatically, but measurably. The move was concentrated in sectors most sensitive to institutional uncertainty: financials, real estate, long-duration fixed income. The sectors that benefit from low, stable interest rates, the sectors that suffer when institutional uncertainty pushes yields higher. The dollar weakened slightly against the euro and the yen. This is the classic institutional uncertainty signal, international investors reducing dollar allocations slightly when American governance stability is in question. The move is small today, but small moves in reserve allocation produce large aggregate effects when multiplied across trillions of dollars of international holdings. Gold moved higher. Gold always moves higher when institutional uncertainty spikes. It is the oldest safe haven in human economic history, the asset that holds value precisely when institutional systems are under stress. The gold move today is a direct market vote on the institutional credibility implications of the second arrest order. And in the options market, where sophisticated investors pay for protection against large moves, the cost of hedging against a sharp equity market decline has increased. The VIX, which measures the market's expectation of future volatility, ticked upward, not dramatically, but consistently, in the direction that says the market believes more volatility is coming. All of these moves are small individually. Together, they paint a precise picture. The market is not panicking, it is recalibrating. It is updating its probability distribution to account for the confirmation effect of the second arrest order, moving from treating the legal crisis as a temporary disruption toward treating it as a permanent feature of the current institutional environment. That recalibration is the most expensive thing that can happen to an ordinary person's finances, not a single dramatic crash that forces attention. A gradual, persistent upward pressure on borrowing costs, a gradual, persistent downward pressure on asset values, a gradual, persistent increase in the uncertainty tax that every American pays on every financial transaction. Here is the number I promised at the beginning. The number is 43. $43 billion per year. That is the current estimated annual additional interest cost flowing from American borrowers to bond investors as a direct consequence of the institutional uncertainty premium created by the Trump legal crisis. It started at zero before the crisis. It rose to $54 billion at the peak of the first arrest order episode. It partially recovered toward $37.8 billion after the Supreme Court stay. And today's second arrest order is pushing it back toward $43 billion. $43 billion per year, divided by 330 million Americans. That is approximately $130 per person per year, every man, woman, and child in the United States, paying an invisible institutional uncertainty tax on every financial transaction they make. Not because of any policy decision, not because of any economic cycle, because a federal judge, Trump's own 2019 appointee, applied the Supreme Court's own standard to the evidence before him and reached the same conclusion twice. The judge struck back. The